Today I'm going over my third place Springfest France deck. If you still need a beautiful playmat, go to zerodamagegaming.com. And if you still need a beautiful deck box like this one, you can also go to zerodamagegaming.com, use the code Solemn for a discount. There's also, of course, the Vanguard Mastery course if you want to up your Vanguard skills. And if you still need Vanguard cards, go to 50cards.shop and use the code Solemn for a discount. Now, in terms of shoutouts, of course, biggest shoutouts to teammates Jay and Mo. On YouTube, Mo is called Astral Susanoo. Of course, incredible players. If you want to see the top 3 mat, it's here. Very, very cool. Top 3 right here. Wow. But yeah, this is easily one of the coolest top mats Bushi has done so far. The Eva one for Overdress is also very nice. Now, for a deck, I played Highlander once again. I will not be going into too much detail on some of the card choices because I already did a half-hour deck profile of my Worlds deck list where I got 3rd place as well a few months ago. So the link will be, somewhere in the description for that if you want to go really in-depth on some of the choices. And so this time, we basically had the big question, are we still going to be playing this deck without Katire? Katire was obviously an important part of the deck. It was basically the way you would be plussing. Now, the big misconception people have is that like, oh, but Katire can search all your one-offs and this and that. And while that is obviously true and really incredible, when you have a very fast reindeer ride-down based meta, the Katire isn't really great because of the searching. While that helps, the greatest part is actually the plus, because one Katire turns into 3 cards on board, which then allows you to bounce it all back with Heltrada or with Ange or Tirua. So it's not so much that you're like, well, I can search my Honolulu or my Sandy and so forth. That's obviously also great. The real power comes from the hard plus that she provides. And so that is the one thing you're kind of missing. However, with that being said, Reindeer can still high roll like crazy, and so I felt it was okay to still bring to an event. So for the list, 4 Reindeer, I hope I don't have to explain why. For our right targets, we have Olivia, Aniska, Laura, Ange, Lupina, Tirua, and then finally still the 1G Ange. She still made a cut. I think now more than ever, we really want the ability to bounce stuff back because we no longer have Katire. So we really want the hand plussing, and also we want to be able to ride down. Once again though, if you want to have like hard details, check out the older profile. Also, I did a more in-depth like ride up in the Vanguard Mastery course on this particular deck right after Worlds. Then for grade 2s, I still have my 5 crazy good ride targets. So if you can ride one of these, you're always going to be happy. You'll then be able to ride down into them as well and get even more value. And now that we no longer have Katire, being able to Klasina or Lizelot is actually more important than ever, because that's going to be 3 bodies that you can then bounce, so you don't feel as bad anymore about, not having the Katire being 3 bodies. Then I'm also playing the Melty, which is now even more important. Again, like I said in the World's profile, this is basically like a weak Katire because this is 2 bodies on board, whereas Katire was 3. So you really want to play this now. Anyone who wasn't before, first of all, what the hell are you doing? But secondly, now you really want to. Next, we added Hendrina because, well, we don't have Katire to search our ride downs anymore, so we had to add the amount of cards that can ride down, which means I'm also still playing Eleanor, of course, but Hendrina is like the next best thing. And then 1 Sistico to put stuff back, and then Pearl Sister. I honestly considered cutting Pearl Sister because it's like, if you can't Katire into it, how often is it gonna be a brick versus a crazy high roll? But I was like, fuck it, I don't have time to test. Like, I really only started testing like Tuesday. So like, oops. So I was, fuck it, I'll keep on playing it, but it was honestly a consideration to straight up cut Pearls. Then for grade 1s, again, one card that changed, I added a Vanessa. Previously, when you would Ange, you would often search for Katire to still go +1 at the end of the whole thing. But now that Katire is gone, you don't have any +1. However, you can find Vanessa, which is still gonna, draw you a card. Also, because I added some other cards, and because more people are now riding up into this deck, Soul actually became more important. You'll see which card that actually created that, but even without that card being added, the fact that so many people now know, fuck, I'm never winning the ride down game against Highlander, they ride up. So now you're going to be striding more often, you're going to be Heltradaing more often, meaning you're going to be playing Soul Blast more often. So Soul has become more important, so I added the Vanessa as well. Now everything else is still the same digging cards as before, and now that you don't have Katire, of course, you want to see them even more so. Basically, like, the choices that were optimal for Worlds now became even more required than previously, I feel. Then we are playing the Pearl Sister, well, the other one. I won Rollock. Oddly enough, I was like, I started cutting every single card that Katire could search in this deck because it's like, well, she's gone. Are you really gonna play something that might come up once every 10 games and pray that you then draw the one-off? No. And then I was like, okay, but which card are we keeping? And the one card that I was really sure of I wanted to keep was the Rollock. Of course, when you write down, you turn off all your heal guards. So being able to still have like a strong card that can actually protect you at that point when they do ride up against you because they know they're never winning the ride down or grade 2 game. Pretty good card then. Now for ride down, we have the Justine, we have the Eureka, we have the Myrtoa. This card is still awful. And then finally, the one addition to the deck that's really important in my opinion is the Sia. That's right, Munching Girl Sia. This card was a consideration a long time ago in the deck, but then it kind of fell off because there was like plenty of stuff that you wanted to play over it, and you wanted to Katire and, you know, into various search targets like Honolly and Resius and so forth. However, Katire is gone. So now we once again need hard plussing on the board. We want cards that somehow either draw you cards or call cards to the board by themselves so that when you Heltrada or Ange or Tirua or Ange G, you have stuff to bounce back, because otherwise you have no hand. Like, this deck needs to constantly discard for everything. There's very few cards in Bermuda, actually, I know it's gonna sound crazy, that plus. All the Bermuda cards are like call and bounce and call and bounce and call and bounce, draw and discard, but never just hard plus. Try and count. It'll be Mirada, but that's an on-right, that's not a rear guard. Clasina, that's an on-right, that's not a rear guard. The only ones that actually plus are Lizelot, Melty, and Sia. That's it. Oh, and Steza. Shout out my girl Steza. Great Pot of Greed. But so the fact that Katire is gone, I needed another card, and it was like, fine, Sia is the next best thing. Also, it can dig, because if you find something on top that you really want to hand, like most often a reindeer, then you can still add it to hand, but then you need to pay a discard cost. Now, this is the one card that also costs Soul Blast, and ideally, I want to spam the living shit out of this card. If I'm seeing her, I would love to just go like call something, bounce, call again, call something, because that will populate the field in the same way that Katire did. And that kind of, you know, gets around that issue. But so very important to run this now, in my opinion. And so therefore, I now need Soul, and so I'm playing Vanessa. And also, I changed something in my trigger lineup for the same reason. For triggers, I'm playing the 3 crits. Once again, I'm still thinking of Federica in my trigger lineup, so I need to keep it diversified. But the one thing I changed was I'm now playing 2 of the Soul crit instead of only the 1, because I started feeling, okay, I find this very important. You might even almost argue that you want to swap these ratios just because you want to see the Soul now that badly, so that you can still activate Heltrada while activating Sia and so forth. And all the other triggers, once again, they're all the one-offs because I do want to hit the Federica more reliably. 3 draw PGs, the 4 heals, and the 1 Shizuku starter. Once again, if any of this doesn't make sense because I'm going about it too quickly, just check out the full Worlds profile. I go way more in depth there. And I'm playing triple Heltrada. You will virtually never use the 3rd, but I want to be, you know, rather safe than sorry. This changed from my Worlds list. I'm playing 2 Shizuku now. I'm just too afraid to get stuck on not reindeer and like have to stride and have to start searching, you know, just super awkward games basically where I'm looking for the heals to survive and a better ride target or something along those lines. So being able to then Shizuku for it is pretty cool. Does it come up often? Absolutely not. Most of your strides are just gonna be Federica fodder, but still I would rather, you know, have this than the second Tirua. Speaking of Tirua, I now have 1 Tirua. SP, shout out to Astral Susanoo right here. Finally got that SP going. And an Ange, because Link Joker is a fake deck, but you might as well make it completely fake. Then we have Shandy. This thing doesn't really come up. Federica, MVP. Just the fact that if you're close to deck out, you go like, haha, it's over, is really fun. Megiddo, because you do farm a lot of force markers, and so sometimes you notice, damn, my reindeer turn is gonna kind of suck, but I do have like this crazy stacked drop zone, especially because Pearl Sisters, often you're like, wow, these are bricks, I'm gonna start guarding with them, throwing them away, and now they're in the drop, and you're like, fuck, now I can actually, you know, get them back with Megiddo. That's pretty solid. And then for G-Guardians, 2 Citron, 2 of this, 1 of this, and 1 of this. Honestly, I barely G-Guarded. Games just don't last that long. Like, you're doing ride down stuff, so you don't get access to it, and then next turn, you're probably either Heldradaing them to death, or you're maybe even reindeering them to death, so you don't really have many opportunities for G-Guarding. I think I used this to, like, grab a reindeer back so I could rewrite it, and I used this to turn off Choo, which is really funny. If you don't know that interaction, basically, if your opponent is a Narukami player and they start swinging with their Choos first because your front row is empty, then you can just Citron something into the front row rear guard, and now that whole card shuts off, so that's funny. But beyond that, didn't really G-Guard much. You do, of course, want to play these. These are, like, the best ones. I think these ratios are but the deck awkwardly does not G-Guard very often. So the most common question after the ban list, of course, was, is Highlander now dead? I don't think so at all. I still think this deck has like a disgusting high roll. Is it still as strong? No. You definitely feel it. I know some people were saying like, oh, but you only played one Katire before, so blah, blah, blah. But like, no, because when you Anj or Lara, you're gonna have Katire. Like, if you didn't draw her at that point, she's in your deck. So the deck gets small, Lara's gonna find her, and Anj can just fetch her. So you're always gonna have access to her at some point, and thus get access to the plussing. And again, if you draw her, it's gonna be a lot of games in my build, because I'm digging for it so often. It is a big difference. You do notice a much smaller hand. And if you were playing any tech that you were gonna search, like for example, a Betty, to put back an over trigger, like for example the Resius. Suddenly, with Resius as an example, previously you played 2 Resius, which would mean that in a lot of matchups you would have access to the card. Now you're playing 1 or 0 because you wanted to cut it because you can no longer search it, and so it does definitely weaken the deck. But it's not dead, it's still solid. So I hope you found this interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.